There's a sort of myth in modern society that when Charles Darwin published his great book, The Origin of Species, all the scientific people shouted yes and all the religious people shouted no. That's not true on either side.
Why are Christians nervous about evolution? And why do we even use a phrase like the E word? That's a conversation which Christians haven't had very deeply.
We think that where we come from determines who we are and how we should live.
It's very important to recognize the Bible is not a book. The Bible is a library. It has all sorts of different kinds of writing in it. When we read Genesis 1, we have to figure out, what am I reading?
It's a potent and counterintuitive theological statement in the ancient world, where people say, that's totally different from anything we've ever seen.
A college student is taught for their entire life that believing in evolution is denying the Christian faith. I felt that God was asking me to do something about this.
The debate between so-called science and so-called faith has a lot of murky roots. The 18th century was a way of simplifying certain questions. Right, God's out of the mix, now we can just do our experiments. Sadly, the church colluded with this.
What was Paul's view exactly about how the world was created? What was his scientific point of view?
He was feeling really compelled to write a book about the evolution-creation controversy and how that was negatively impacting the church.
We need to relocate the question, otherwise it'll be a dialogue of the deaf.
If we explain the biology and someone feels that it's inconsistent with Scripture, we have to make it consistent with Scripture before we can speak. And if we can't easily make it consistent with Scripture, that we're somehow suspect.
There is a distinction which is there in Scripture between heaven and earth. But the thing about heaven and earth is that they are never supposed to be far apart.
Creation, it's not this one-time deal in the past. God is intricately involved now.
The purpose of this whole conversation is actually truth and connection with God.
Well, why does God use history to achieve his purposes?
Maybe this inspired book is more sophisticated, more insightful than we first thought.
We don't have to stay on the surface. We can go deeper.
It seemed like there was an effort to tamp all this down, to not let it become a big controversy. Sometimes a little controversy is a good thing.
I mean, it's God's universe. This natural world is God's creation.
We alone are among the privileged few that are able to catch a glimpse of how magnificent God's creation is. God will not be divorced from his creation.